Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishiki. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Happy to be here with all of you. When I first came here, I didn't recognize most of you, which I figured was a very good sign for the future of this Krishna house. And I've had the fortune to get to know some of you. And we'll be leaving tomorrow, Max and Trish and myself, to Philadelphia. So hopefully I can meet a few more of you today. If I don't get that chance, then I wish you well in your journey. And it definitely just gets better. That's my experience. So today we're discussing chapter 20 of the 9th canto. Does anyone remember what we studied previously in this canto? Just call it out if you remember something. Okay, Devayani and Yayati. Yeah. Who else?
Big cat fight and the girl got pushed in the well. Oh, yeah.
We heard about a cat fight. Yeah. Yes, thank you. So this chapter begins with some genealogy. I'll spare you all reading all the names. Although when we do start to learn about the personalities, then reading these lists of names becomes not just a dry thing anymore. It actually becomes something wonderful. And Prabhupada Priya explained it to me previously, that it's like getting to know our family that we'd forgotten. And then we are reminded, and then just hearing a name invokes so much emotion and happiness and imagery. So in time, these genealogies will become wonderful and exciting. But right now, at least for me, it's a little dry. So we'll skip through that part. And so what happens after the genealogy is we hear about one of the descendants of Puru, who was a great king. Does anyone know which lineage? We're hearing about the moon and the sun dynasties. The moon. So okay, we're hearing about the moon dynasty. So Lord Ram and Lord Krishna appeared in the sun and the moon dynasties, respectively. And so here we're hearing about a descendant of Puru, one of the great kings of the moon dynasty. And his name is Dushmanta. So Dushmanta, as a king, was doing a kingly thing by going out hunting. It was allowed that a king could go and hunt in order to practice the art of weaponry. So he was out. And so he approached this ashram. And when he approached the ashram, he saw this effulgent, glowing personality. And this beautiful young woman who was there, named Shakuntala. This was in the ashram of Kanva Muni, this sage. I don't know much about him. She was under the care of Kanva Muni because for some reason or other, her birth parents weren't taking care of her. Menaka and Vishwamitra were her parents. So also as a king, being a little bit tinged by the mode of passion, he became sexually attracted and started to talk her up and started to ask her in a joking kind of mood, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And so she kind of reciprocated in the same mood, and she was asking him questions that they were both complimenting each other. "Oh, lotus-eyed one, oh, beautiful one." And she said, "Please, please accept whatever little service we can. We'll give you some wild rice. You come stay here." And he said that he learned that she was the son of Vishwamitra, who was a king formerly before he was a sage. And so he said that, "I never desired to enjoy irreligiously. So because you're the he hinted that because she is the son of a king, oh, excuse me, thank you. Because she was the daughter of a king, And he said, I don't want to enjoy irreligiously. So he means that he doesn't want to marry outside of his caste, his varna. And so he kind of subtly hinted like that. And so she accepted his subtle proposal by just silence. So there's an expression now that silence doesn't mean consent, right? But apparently in this culture, it actually did mean consent. So she was silent, and actually Prabhupada explains that that was her accepting the proposal. And she also anyway invited him in and said, please accept whatever service, spend a night here. And so they got together and he left. He went back to his kingdom. And after some time, she gave birth to an extremely powerful son who was actually a partial expansion of the Supreme Lord. And his name was Bharat, after which I believe he's the one who this earth was named Bharatvarsha. India is still known as Bharat. We hear the Mahabharat that's named after this son, Bharat. So he was actually so powerful that he would capture elephants and he would play with them. So that gives you a little taste of how powerful Bharat was. So the wife, Shakuntala, and Bharat, the son, they went to the kingdom to Dushmanta, and she wanted to come back to him. But he at first was rejecting, although he knew that this is my wife, or my whatever romantic lover from this forest fling. Yeah. And so because he was concerned at what the citizens would think. So he at first rejected and pretended he didn't know. But then, because she was so chaste, a voice from the sky said this verse, which we're going to recite today. I'll just read the translation, and then we can do the Sanskrit. We can read the translation just for the meaning. The voice said, O Maharaj Dushmanta, a son actually belongs to his father, whereas the mother is only a container, like the skin of a bellows. According to Vedic injunctions, the father is born as the son, and therefore maintain your own son and do not insult Shakuntala. There's some touchy subjects here that I think I'll call on Prabhupada Priya or someone to help us understand better. But so this voice from the sky says, this is actually your son. Don't insult Shakuntala, accept your son, take care of him, be responsible. And so then he says, all right, I guess I've got to accept them now. So again, to save face, to make sure he looks like a good guy, he accepts them. And then eventually he leaves the kingdom, or he leaves that role. It doesn't explain how, either by death or by retirement. And then Bharat takes over, and he ends up becoming extremely powerful, ruling the entire universe, actually. And for many thousands of years, he ruled, and he did amazing sacrifices, gave immense charity of cows and elephants and gold. And then Bharat wants to have a son. And so he has 3 sons and 3 of his queens. And the sons don't look like the king. And so the queens are concerned that the king will think that they were unfaithful and had a child with someone else because they don't look like him. So they kill their sons. There's some hard to understand things in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the queens, they kill their sons because they don't want to be seen as unfaithful. So one major lesson we're seeing in this section is the power of false ego. If we want to look like a good person, the crazy things we will do. the great violence we can cause to others, as Dushmanta did, rejecting his this queen and her son, and these queens killing their sons. So then, naturally, Bharat is disappointed and wants to have another son. So he does the sacrifice, and the demigods called the Maruts, they give him the son Bharadwaj. And then a very confusing thing happens. I don't fully understand it. But Brihaspati, who is the guru of the demigods, he becomes attracted by his brother's wife. So, yeah, this who's actually pregnant. He becomes sexually attracted to his wife, who is pregnant at the time, and the son within the womb curses him. This is yeah. and I think he tells him, don't do this. He ends up doing it anyway, and he unites with his brother's wife, his brother's pregnant wife. And and then I'm not remembering exactly what happened there.
So the fetus within the womb kicks the other.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. Right. And then here's what happens. It gets even crazier. So her name was Mamata, the pregnant wife. This is like a Jerry Springer. Everything comes from Bhagavatam. Any pleasure you want. So she again was concerned, wanted to save face and didn't want to look like a bad person. So she basically rejected her child, who was born of an illegitimate union. And then Brihaspati, the guru of the demigods, it's a very hard thing to understand. He said, "You foolish woman, although this child was born from the wife of one man through the semen discharged by another, you should maintain him." And then, this is really like the Jerry Springer kind of thing. Upon hearing this, Mamata replied, "Oh, Brihaspati, you maintain him." Fighting back and forth for who's going to get custody of the child. And then what happened? They both just say, "See ya," and they just leave. But they're arguing and then they just leave. And apparently, I don't understand why, but thus the child was known as Bharadwaj. So the name has to do with this whole quarrel that happened. And then finally, so the demigods who originally gave the child, who gave Bharadwaj, they maintained this other child. And thus ends the chapter. So, some very interesting topics here we have to discuss. Yes, Prabhu.
Was Maharaj Bharat like brother of Brihaspati? Like, I don't understand why suddenly we are talking about Maharaj Bharat.
Maharaj Bharat wanted to have a child, and he did a sacrifice. The Maruts gave him Bharadwaj, and
then why suddenly? Yeah.
That's a good point. Okay, so Brihaspati, yeah, how is Bharadwaj? Mamata was Brihaspati's brother's wife. Yeah, it's a little confusing, huh? Oh, so this child, which was given by the Maruts, is Bharadwaj. Who Bharadwaj is the son of Bharat, who was given by the demigods and took birth from the womb of Mamata. Yeah.
Okay, so that was all Bharadwaj's backstory. Then.
Yeah.
That's Bharadwaj's backstory.
He got to Bharat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
So when he needed a son, then the Maruts presented him with Bharadwaj.
Yes.
Then he became the king.
So then next chapter we'll continue hearing more about the dynasty of Bharat. Yes.
So
Abhidaya.
Bharat isn't connected at all.
No, he is. Oh, biologically. with Bharat. Well, yeah, there's different allowances that can be made to continue a dynasty if the king is not able to produce a son. You can do the sacrifice and these demigods will give you a son. It could be considered legitimate. Yeah. And also the king was allowed to have his brother impregnate his queen. And that was considered, if he was impotent and couldn't produce a child, then that was an allowance made to continue the dynasty. Yeah. Which is forbidden actually in Kali Yuga, one of the 5 things forbidden in this age.
What that means that Krishna appears in this dynasty.
And so
All this fatness.
yeah, we're in the material world, so these things happen. Yeah, there's all sorts of dramas that happen. So let's go to the verse before we get too deep into something, so we can recite the Sanskrit here. So this is text 22, right? Mata bhasra pitu putro yena jata sa eva saha harasva putram dushmanta mava mamstha shakuntalam. Please chant. Putro yena jata sa eva saha harasva putram dushmanta mava mamstha shakuntalam. Mata basra pitu putro yena jata sa eva sa harasva putram dushmanta mava mamstha shakuntalam.
Mata basra pitu putro
yena jata sa eva saha harasva putram dushmanta mava mamstha shakuntalam. Mata basra pitu putro yena jata sa eva saha harasva putram dushmanta mava mamstha shakuntalam. Okay, so we can do the word for word together. Mata, the mother, Basra, just like the skin of a bellows containing air. Pitu, of the father. Putra, the son. Yena, by whom. Jata, one is born. Saha, the father. Eva, indeed. Sa, the son. Parasva, just maintain. Putram, your son. Dushmanta, O Maharaj Dushmanta. Ma, do not. Avamamstha, insult. Shakuntalam, Shakuntala. Translation altogether. The voice said, O Maharaj Dushmanta, the son actually belongs to his father, whereas the mother is only a container, like the skin of a bellows. According to Vedic injunctions, the father is born as the son. Therefore, maintain your own son and do not insult Shakuntala. So can someone kindly volunteer? Next.
According to Vedic injunction, Atma Vai Putra Namasi, the father becomes the son. The mother is simply like a storekeeper. because the seed of the child is placed in her womb, but it is the father who is responsible for maintaining the son. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he is the seed-giving father of all living entities. Aham bija pradapita, and therefore he is responsible for maintaining them. This is also confirmed in the Vedas. Eko bahunam yo vedadhati kaman. Although God is one, he maintains all living entities with their necessities of life. The living entities in different forms are sons of the Lord, and therefore the Father, the Supreme Lord, supplies them food according to their different bodies. The small ant is supplied a grain of sugar, and the elephant is supplied tons of food, but everyone is able to eat. Therefore, there is no question of overpopulation.
Thank you, Prabhu. Can we have someone else continue? Amrita?
Because the Father, Krishna, is fully opulent, there's no scarcity of food. And because there's no scarcity, the propaganda of overpopulation is only a myth. Actually, one suffers for want of food when material nature, under the order of the Father, refuses to supply him food. It is a living entity's position that determines whether food will be supplied or not. When a diseased person is forbidden to eat, this does not mean that there is a scarcity of food. Rather, the diseased person requires the treatment of not being supplied with food. In Bhagavad Gita 7:10, the Lord also says, Bija mam sarva bhutana, I am the seed of all living entities. A particular type of seed is sown within the earth, and then a particular type of tree or plant comes out. The mother resembles the earth, and when a particular type of seed is sown by the father, a particular type of body takes birth.
Thank you very much. You can recite along with me. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Thank you very much. Sometimes I do that and then Shri Chaitanya and then 5 minutes later. So there's many different topics we could touch on, things that are hard to understand. One thing I'd like to start with is the importance of using hermeneutics. Who has taken a hermeneutics class here? Not very many. Please do consider when you have an opportunity to take a class. Maybe Prabhupada Priya will offer again in the future. She definitely will. Yes, amazing, amazing. It's a framework for understanding what's in the scriptures, because in any tradition, we will encounter things that are bewildering and don't seem to match with our current understanding of the way things are, like the description of the universe in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, or these descriptions of relation between husband and wife, the different cultural etiquettes and these statements which can kind of throw us off, like the mother is only a container. And especially we see specifically with things relating to women, there's so much abuse and mistreatment of women that when we read these things, then it can really trigger something. Okay, maybe something's off here. So it's important to use hermeneutics, and there's many tools presented in hermeneutics that ISKCON Shastric Advisory Council, they've created, or they haven't created these things, but they have presented them from our tradition. And one very basic and important tool is just looking at things in context. So that's what Prabhupada Priya did. We were discussing this last night, and she put this verse nicely in context, that this voice in the sky is convincing Dushmanta to be responsible for his son and his queen. And so therefore he's saying that actually this son belongs to you. So the voice is not meaning to insult Shakuntala, saying that she's only a container. he's saying that you're responsible. The voice is making the point that you're the one who's responsible here. You went through and united with her, and you're ultimately now responsible. And it's obvious that the voice is not intending to make an insult, because it's saying maintain your son and don't insult Shakuntala. So be respectful to her. So it's important that we, when we see a single statement or we see a single line, something that confuses us, that's hard to understand, it's important to take it in proper context, look at the verses before and after, try to understand the intention of why it's being spoken, and especially approach someone who has a more deep understanding, like Prabhupada Priya very quickly cleared this up for me when we spoke yesterday. So that's just one important tip I'd like to share. And if you do get a chance, definitely take the hermeneutics course, and it will broaden your understanding of understanding our scriptures. So just briefly, I'll share something that stuck out to me from this section, and then I'll hear from you all, some discussion. Is what stands out to me here is taking responsibility. So Dushmanta, he, out of lust, he unites with Shakuntala, and then he leaves. And when they come back to him, he initially rejects them and doesn't want to take responsibility for them until it looks bad, until he's going to look like a jerk. Then he finally takes responsibility. And Prabhupada explains here that Krishna is responsible for all the living entities. So he's making a comparison that the Father is responsible for the Son, and similarly, Krishna is responsible for all living entities, and he maintains them all. So in this way, Dushmanta, as a responsible father, should maintain his son and his queen. So just some reflections on responsibility. First off, what does responsibility mean? Can you all share? What other definitions, what comes to mind when you hear responsibility? Duty, yeah. What else? Commitment. Yeah.
Ability to respond.
Yes, nice. Ability to respond. So you do something, and then later on, someone will come to you and you'll have to respond. You're responsible. So you have to, or accountable is another word. Yeah.
Power. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, nice. Okay, good. So ultimately, anything that we don't like in our life is our responsibility. And so we can be in an attitude of responsibility, which will empower us, or we can be in an attitude of irresponsibility, which will disempower us. So how is that? If we are irresponsible and let's say something is going wrong in our life, or someone does something that hurts us, if we just complain and blame, you're the problem, then it's irresponsible, because we might actually have a part to play in it. And if we don't consider that, then we're disempowering ourselves, and we're actually losing any ability to change the situation. So you've been studying this stuff, Trish. Trish is nodding. So when we take responsibility, however, so let's say something is going wrong. A roommate is causing us trouble. It's difficult to live near somebody, and they're doing something that disturbs us. We can be in an attitude of disempowerment and just blame them. They're a problem. Oh, God, I don't like living with this person. When are they going to grow up? Whatever it is. And then we can't do anything about the situation. Like Srila Prabhupada said in the quote this morning, that's like the attitude of a fly, and it's just going to the ugly things. But rather, we should try to see in that situation, is there any small, even very small part that I have to play in creating this issue? And actually, thoughts are material energy, and they actually influence the situation. So even if we don't physically do something, just having these critical thoughts is actually bringing down the consciousness of the environment. So we should try to consider, what responsibility do I have here? What part did I have to play? Even if it's very small, what can I do to remedy this situation? And if nothing else, it could just be, okay, Krishna is kindly arranged for this person to be in my life so that I can learn what not to do. Like my older sister very kindly taught me a lot of lessons. Anyone have an older sibling who taught them what not to do? You were that older sister. So let's try not to be that person who teaches what not to do. So in this mentality, then we're empowered because we have agency. We can actually do something about the situation. Otherwise, what are we doing? Why are we wasting our time just complaining and criticizing? We get nothing done that way. It's just a total waste of time, waste of energy. We could be thinking about Krishna's pastimes. We could be thinking about our friends lovingly and planning for how we can serve them and make them happy. And we're just filling our mind with trash. So in one way you could say Krishna consciousness is turning our mind from filled with garbage to filled with honey, filled with sweetness. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki. So we should be responsible and recognize what role we have to play in influencing our environment. Whether we like it or not, very interesting. We always have an influence on our environment. We might not think we do. We might think, oh, I'm so, I'm not very skilled, or I'm not very whatever. I don't have any influence here, but actually we do. If we're sitting somewhere just, like this, we're naturally influencing. People will see us and it will influence their mind to see someone looking really down. So it's also empowering to recognize that even the way we carry our body actually influences our environment. We were with Vaisheshika Prabhu in Mayapur and Jagannath Puri recently, and simply the way he stands I can't forget just the way he is. Just to look at him once, he'll stand there like this. And even without doing anything, just the way he stands is so powerful. Or I was out distributing books with him in Toronto, and he would approach people just really slowly, and he would just go like this. Just wait, and then get the fist bump. It was the coolest thing ever. They would just really slowly, with great gravity, but with a cool smile, just wait for them to come in for the fist bump. And just that little act was so potent. So that is an example. Vaisheshika Prabhu is a shining example of what it means to recognize the power that we can have by Krishna's grace, and we can have a great positive influence on our environment. And on the other hand, we might not recognize it, but we do have an influence, even if we're if we know it or not, if we like it or not, we have an influence. So in one sense, you can say it's an aspect of responsibility to recognize that and to always try to uplift our environment. Wherever we are, we should try to bring the consciousness up and always help remind others of Krishna. even if it's indirectly, people who don't really want to hear about Krishna, family or whatever, we should always try to uplift the consciousness. People should be happy wherever we go, not whenever we go. So these are a few thoughts on responsibility. We don't have much time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you for listening. Yes, Trish.
There are many times where I'll be feeling, I'm sure other people can relate, I'm not feeling very enthusiastic. I'm feeling, like this, like how you were expressing, like down. And so when I'm excited, I mean, I can be that person, but when I'm not, it's very difficult to handle the responsibility of enthusing others. So how can I honor myself and the needs that I have while still inspiring others in whatever little capacity that I have?
I'll share one thought and then let's hear others. I learned from Amrita when I was in Orlando. We were serving together, the first Krishna house attempt. And she would just disappear sometimes. And then I would get really annoyed. What the heck? We're supposed to be going to distribute books. What's wrong with you? But then I finally asked you, and you were like, yeah, if I'm just really not in a place where I can benefit others, then I just take some space and kind of recuperate and then get into a good consciousness. So I've been doing that, and it's so profound. If I'm just going to be there and I'm just going to bring everyone down, then what's the use of me being there? Better I just take a minute, do what I need to do. Even if it's just I need to go lay down for 5 minutes, then it can drastically change the way that you affect others.
I was thinking also from that example that you just gave, like maybe if she had told you beforehand, then you wouldn't have been like, what the heck? So then communication is also a very big aspect of that, to communicate our needs. And yeah.
Thank you, Trish. And Max, you did something. Okay, there's some. Let's hear Gopi Jivan, and you can go next.
This is not on the topic of responsibility, so I hope that's okay. It's on
We'll take
one
it.
of the other themes that came up, this idea of public perception of us and reputation.
Yeah.
So that's something we definitely have to be wary of in our spiritual lives. And I think there are two ways in which it can manifest that can be very detrimental. The first is how among devotees, how we are concerned about our reputation and our standing. That can really put you in a mentality of not being straightforward as a Vaishnava should be. And then you also there's comparison that constantly comes in, and you're constantly looking at other devotees and what they're doing and making value judgments about their spiritual strengths, and it just becomes a mess.
Yeah.
So, like someone like Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj would suggest, just stop trying to avoid criticism and gather glorification, and maybe do the opposite. Whoever criticizes you is your real friend. So that's one area where it manifests. But then another one, which I think is also very significant, is this is a can of worms, but we each have to explore this in our own spiritual lives. But in terms of the actual public, being a devotee is as an identity that really swims upstream, and we have to kind of be proud of it and not care what those who don't understand the value of this path might think.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Wonderful reflections. Yes, Prabhupada Priya, and then Chris.
I wanted to respond to Trisha's point, the question that was about if you're feeling down, then what do you do, basically? Yeah, a couple of thoughts is one is that one thing is that parenting helped me a lot with this, because you want your kids to be happy, and that they're very sensitive to your mood, and then if the mother's depressed, then that really affects the kids very deeply. It's hard for them to be happy. So, yeah, so even if I was feeling down or something, I would never show it to the children. You know, I'd always be like, I'd be like ready to cry, you know, in my room, and then I'd come out and I'd be like, hey, what's going on today? You know, so, but it's a question of love, you know, it's about, I want them to be happy. So I'm going to do whatever it takes, adjust my mood in order to help them to be happy, to be inspired, to have a positive attitude towards life. And then, okay, so then do I just repress my own feelings? No, then I have somebody else, like a senior devotee that I go to. And then Prabhu, I've been feeling really depressed lately. Can you give me some advice? This is my situation. So you have a way to deal with those things that's productive. And then for junior devotees, then, you know, just be a jolly devotee. And for their, so that they'll be happy, so that they'll be inspired, so that they can be positive about practicing bhakti.
Thank you so much. It's a really important point. Yeah, because it's not that every time we feel some difficulty that we have to go away and take alone time and, you know, deal with it. Sometimes we just got to tolerate and go on with our duty. And then in the proper time, we take the appropriate action, approach someone who we trust. Thank you for that. Amrita, yes. And then we can hear Chris's point because you were responding, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna add that it's nice to, I like communication. This has always been a theme that I have learned and that has helped me take in responsibility. And I was thinking that we also have to set the example for others to work through their emotions. If they're feeling down, we have to let them know what is the proper way to address them and to work through these things. So it's kind of like an openness, but at the same time, like a responsibility of setting the example, because everyone will go through these things in their life. So that was
Nice. Thank you. You were going to respond. Maybe let's hear Chris's point and then we can hear Christina.
I have a different point.
Okay, then Chris and then. Okay, let's go. Let's hear from you, Chris.
I just wanted to add the point that I think that in a given difficult situation, looking at yourself and saying, you know, what was my part in this? How can I be responsible is a very healthy thing to do. But if somebody else comes to you with a problem, something that's happening to them, and you say to them, look at how you're responsible for this. It's not always the best way to be listening to someone that's hurting, especially if it's, you know, somebody very young or somebody that's obviously not responsible for something. It's yes, you can just come off as a jerk if you do that.
As opposed to that, what would you tell them that would be more beneficial?
I think just listening to people and hearing what they're saying is pretty beneficial in a situation like that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's hear Christina and then here's Shruti.
So I just had like an interpretation of the verse that I thought would be helpful for people to know. So the like woman being the skin of a bellows thing sounds a little bit depersonalizing and a little bit alarming at first, but I really feel this is like a Judge Judy kind of verse. Like she's basically being like, you're the dad. Because like, if you think about what Maharaj Dushmanta is doing, he's kind of doing this like Michael Jackson, Billie Jean thing, you know, like the girl's not my son. Right? Like that's what he's doing. And the reason he can do that is because they don't have paternity tests. And because he can be like, well, I mean, you know, you don't got any evidence, like, okay, maybe he looks a little bit like me, but maybe that's just her type, you know, like you just don't know. Like, you know, because the sexual act and the birth of the child are separated in time and space, and there's this covering where you can't, you know, a woman's body is not transparent, so you can't like see immediately what's going on, right? So there's this deniability, and so it takes a freaking voice from the sky being like, no. You like, yeah, you can deny all you want and you can say that there's plausible deniability, but like the reason this kid looks like you and acts like you is because he is your son and you got to deal with that. So that's how I interpret it, as opposed to like, oh, women are not people.
Thank you. Very helpful. Very nice. Yeah, well, on that, I was thinking as I read this, don't be so irresponsible that a voice from the sky has to come and tell you that you're doing something irresponsibly. Just deal with it. Yes, Shruti.
We should have you do the skit for the end of the year party. You could be the voice from the sky.
It's
Dramatic.
by going back to, that discussion about, when we are going through something. And, actually I had a funny story. We had who was doing it? Mary Brajnanda was doing like a long time ago. It was like a book distribution talk or seminar, whatever. And I was really down that day. So I came down for the the seminar, and we had to role play with another person, book distribution. And then so I was doing it with Sridham, and Sridham, he was the book distributor. I was like the guy on the street. And he asked me something like, oh, I don't know exactly what he asked. He asked something like, oh, you look spiritual. And then he said, he said, what do you do when you're sad or something? And I said, I still do what I'm supposed to do. he's just busted out laughing. But just to Prabhupriya's point, like, growing and becoming more responsible for others means we even if we sometimes we just have to happily do our service for their own sake. And also another point I was thinking was when we do give priority to other people's problems, then our problems, they kind of take a backseat, or it does take a backseat, and then their problems become our problems, which actually ends up helping us. Then we're not as self-absorbed anymore.
Thank you very much. And actually, what I've recognized is that there are some people who ask me for help in Krishna consciousness, and if I'm having difficulties, I look at those difficulties, and oftentimes they're very petty in comparison to what they're going through. And so my own petty issues, I'm letting that bring me down, and then I'm not able to be there for somebody who's going through much more challenging situations. And so Krishna is kindly showing me that it's just, there's this guilt that comes. What am I doing? I could be really helping other people. All of us are in Krishna consciousness. We have the ability to purify ourselves and make space so that we can help others. So why not? Millions of people are out there and they're suffering, and we can be someone who can give them help and kindness. And so it's just a matter of taking responsibility, cleaning our heart, taking this process seriously, and then our capacity for helping others will just increase more and more. Max is dying to say something.
Recently, I took a course on grief and loss. It's like by Karuna Care, and the teacher was mentioning she's been doing counseling for 40 years, and she's counseling some of the devotees in Ukraine and all these things. She mentioned that especially for people that, there's the Red Cross people who will go out and they're experiencing a lot of heavy stuff and hearing a lot of heavy stuff. He said that if you don't have somebody at the end of the day that you're revealing your mind to, they won't let you do that job because it shows a really bad sign. It means that they're just going to hold it all in, and then they're going to become unable to perform nicely. So I feel like it's also a responsible thing for us to have people that we can reveal our mind to. And that's a key distinction between criticism and revealing our minds. Criticism, I've heard described as we're trying to bring somebody else down in the eyes of others. But if something is really just, like hurting our heart, then it's important for us, it's responsible of us to find shelter for that, to reveal our minds. As Prabhupada Priya was mentioning, finding people, senior devotees or peers that we can reveal, like, this is what I'm going through. And it may be small, it might be really petty, but that's where the humility comes in, that we're admitting this is affecting me. This is affecting me. So, and also in receiving other people's minds. In the course, they mentioned this really helpful acronym called OARS, like you have oars on like a boat. So open-ended questions, how are you feeling? What did you think?
Questions that start with what or how.
What or how. Open-ended questions, what or how. Affirmations, just kind of hearing what they said and just saying, oh, okay, so you're saying you like the color blue. Oh, that's very nice. Reflection, and just saying like, okay, so when they said this, you felt like that. And then summary, just kind of like looping it all together. And just that alone can really provide the space that people need And this is a process that she used for devotees in Ukraine that were going through a lot of things, no food, no heat, no water. And after just half an hour of somebody revealing all the difficulties they had gone through, she didn't give any advice, she just listened. By the end of it, it was like, wow, I feel so much better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure we've all experienced that when someone really just listens to us without judgment, how relieving that feels. Shruti Prabhu, should we finish off? Okay. One more thing.
You want to ask Kartikeya Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Kartikeya Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful discussion in class. On Max's point. So yeah, we should have someone to reveal our minds to. Now, what does someone do who has these facilities, who has these people around who are open to hearing them out and console or mentor or just hear them out, but that person themselves finds it difficult to reach out, finds it like very difficult for them to reveal their minds to others. Like what can we do so that we can then take that step? What can you recommend?
Thanks, Kartikeya Prabhu. Tuning in from, where are you right now, Mayapur?
No, New Jersey.
New Jersey, okay. Not as exciting. Okay, so quick response, so we don't delay breakfast too much. If we're having difficulty starting that relationship of revealing our mind with someone, then my experience is trust is built gradually, and you can just tiptoe it. Like when you're getting into water, you first put your toes in to see what the temperature is like. And if it feels okay, then maybe you put your foot in and slowly you get in all the way. And so it's like that with developing a confidential relationship, that you can reveal something small to someone and just see how they take it. If they don't judge you, if they treat you well, they don't gossip and share it with others, then okay, you earn a little trust. And then you continue, maybe reveal something a little more dear to your heart. And like that, you kind of step your way one step at a time into that deep relationship. And we might find that some people don't receive our heart well. And maybe they are a little, we feel judged, or maybe they gossip about it. And then that's okay. We can respect them from a distance and find someone else to develop that relationship with. So that's what I would say, Kartikeya Prabhu. And we can continue the discussion over breakfast. Thank you all very much for hearing me out and for sharing your minds. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Mahaprasade Govinde Namah.